Nebraska Broadcasters Association congratulates and welcomes Rod Bates as a 2014 Hall of Fame inductee. At Nebraska Educational Telecommunications, Rod led television production as the industry transitioned from studio production to field and remote production. Later, as general manager, Rod steered the organization through one of its most challenging times, yet left it as one of the strongest public broadcasters in America. Nebraska Educational Telecommunications is known today as NET. In 1975, the television network was known as ETV and was undertaking the production of Anyone for Tennyson, a national poetry series, at its studios on North 33rd Street in Lincoln.
Of the Nebraska Educational Television Network.
Ron Hull, then program manager, hired a promising young producer from San Diego to help carry the load at ETV.
Hello, I'm William Shatner.
They were taking a lot of the resources to produce that program, and I was hired to come in and do what was left for local production. And it was substantial. There's a lot of local production. It was just astounding to me. I mean, I was in San Diego, which is a major market, and our studio was a converted music recital hall on the campus of San Diego State University, and that's not atypical. That's the way public broadcasting operates, on a shoestring. Here's this 6-story magnificent structure with 4 full-color studios, 3 full-time scenic designers, 300 sets a year. That's how much local production was going through this operation. It was just staggering to me. And it was probably the heyday of public television here in Nebraska.
But this era was also when television was starting remote production. Those early efforts led to memorable experiences.
When I got here, the remote truck was called Big Red. And it was a piece of junk, frankly. I mean, we sort of kept it together with baling wire and Band-Aids and that sort of thing, but it was always fun to go out on a remote with Big Red. Well, it was on its last leg when the NBC logo incident hit, and part of the settlement was that NBC would give us a remote truck, which is fabulous. We were all pretty excited about it. Unfortunately, it was used, and it came out of an owned and operated station in Cleveland. It was also a dog. It was called the Whale. That's how big it was. And I had the dubious distinction of having the very first remote using that truck. And it was with Dick Cavett doing a documentary on Maury Sandoz up in the Sandhills. Very first remote for that truck. And it had an onboard generator, which means it weighed 1 billion pounds. And we got stuck in the sand and had to get a rancher nearby to pull us out.
Rod produced studio shows, sports remotes, and documentaries on 16mm film. He was working very hard and enjoying himself. But he had a growing family and increased his salary by taking a new position fundraising with Nebraskans for Public Television. He enhanced his on-camera presence during pledge drives and the annual NPTV auction. Rod left ETV in the 1980s when Governor Bob Kerry asked him to become the first director of the State Department of Economic Development. When Kerry's term ended in 1987, Rod started his own production company, Bates Video. As a business owner, he became more active in many community organizations, especially the Rotary Club. Then in 1996, after 43 years at the helm, Jack McBride, the legendary founder of NET, announced his retirement. Although content at his own growing business, Bates followed the urgings of close friends, and with recommendations from Woody Varner, Frank Morrison, and Bob Kerry, he was hired as the general manager at NET. Although welcomed back by friends and colleagues, NET was informed that its federal funding was being reduced by $250,000 in the early days of Rod's tenure.
When I came in 1996, that was just around the time Newt Gingrich was trying to zero out funding for public broadcasting. Then the FCC steps up and says, oh, by the way, we want a lot of your analog spectrum back, so you're going to have to convert your entire system from analog to digital. So we hired this consultant to come in and take a look at all this and tell us what we were facing. At the very same time, the state owned its own satellite transponder, and the satellite it resided on was running out of fuel. Same time. When they all came back, the grand total was $60 million at a time when federal funding's threatened and everything else. It was daunting. We put our position together with the consultants' reports and went down to the legislature and boldly went where no man has gone before. And it wasn't very pleasant. And it was a big, big request to the legislature. But I must say that both the legislature and the governor's office stepped up to the plate and did a remarkable job of supporting us yet again. So we are positioned now, I think, to retain that leadership position for the next generation.
That was not the most difficult challenge Rod faced, though. In 2001, budget reductions at the University of Nebraska and state and federal governments led to the loss of more than 100 jobs over a 2-year period.
Significant budget reductions. I mean, the worst we've ever gone through. Ron Hall mentioned, he said, in the 43 years he and Jack were here, they never had to go through what we've had to go through. Not ever.
But Rod and NET persevered by building to make NET relevant to the university, the state, and most importantly, display its worth to the citizens of Nebraska. Sometimes a cheerleader and always a positive spokesman, Rod Bates was the heart of NET.
Our infrastructure, this building, and the equipment, and the satellite, everything is set for the next generation. We're in better shape than most public television stations around the country by far.
Congratulations to Rod Bates on your 2014 induction into the Nebraska Broadcasters Association Hall of Fame. All of us at NET thank you for your leadership, dedication, and contributions.